Clint Eastwood's ex sued him for $70 million. What he said in court left everyone speechless. Here is the full story.
In 1996, a man known for saying almost nothing was forced to speak in the loudest way possible. Clint Eastwood, Hollywood's symbol of stoicism, control, and quiet authority, sat in a courtroom under oath, facing a $70 million lawsuit that threatened to tear apart the image he had spent decades building. Across from him sat Sondra Locke, his former partner of 14 years, a woman who knew the version of him the public never saw. What unfolded in that courtroom was not just a legal battle. It was a slow, brutal exposure of power, betrayal, and the cost of telling the truth when the person you are accusing is untouchable. Eastwood had built his career on restraint. On screen, he let silence speak louder than words. Off screen, he avoided explanations, interviews, and emotional displays. He was the man who never needed to explain himself. But in that courtroom, silence was no longer an option. He was sworn in, questioned, and cornered by evidence that painted a very different picture from the legend audiences admired. The lawsuit wasn't about a bitter breakup from years earlier. It was about whether one of Hollywood's most powerful men had used his influence to quietly destroy the career of the woman who trusted him most. To understand how it reached that point, you have to go back to the beginning. Locke and Eastwood first crossed paths in the early 1970s when she auditioned for a role in one of his films. She didn't get the part, and life moved on, until years later when he cast her as his love interest in a Western. At the time, both were married to other people. What began on that set quickly became an affair, one conducted behind closed doors while the cameras rolled. Eastwood bought her a house, told her things no one had heard him say before, and convinced her she was different from everyone else who came before. He told friends she had changed him, that she had made him believe in commitment, that for the first time he understood monogamy. For more than a decade, they were inseparable. They lived together. They worked together. Film after film, their collaborations turned into box office successes. To the outside world, they looked like a powerful Hollywood couple, both professionally and personally aligned. But behind that image, cracks were forming. As Locke pushed to take control of her own career and direct films herself, Eastwood's influence didn't fade, it intensified. Decisions were overridden. Authority was quietly taken back, and while Locke believed they were building a shared future, Eastwood was living a separate life in secret, fathering children with another woman without her knowledge. The illusion shattered suddenly and cruelly. While Locke was away working on a film, she returned home to find the locks changed. Her belongings were gone. Security guards stood at the gate. She wasn't just broken up with, she had been erased from her own home. Shock turned into disbelief, and disbelief into legal action. Locke sued for financial support, emotional distress, and breach of trust. The fight dragged on for months, draining and public. Eventually, Eastwood offered a settlement that appeared generous, a multi-million-dollar directing deal with a major studio. Locke agreed, believing it was a way to rebuild her career and move forward. She thought the war was over. It wasn't. Week after week, Locke showed up at the studio with new ideas, scripts, concepts, stories that would later become successful films in the hands of others. Every pitch was rejected. Meetings ended quickly. Executives avoided eye contact. Assistants stopped returning calls. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe the ideas weren't strong enough. Maybe her moment had passed. But over time, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Something wasn't right. Then people on the inside began to talk, quietly, carefully. A producer was told flat out that no one would work with her because it was part of Clint's deal. Another executive admitted that pushing one of her projects forward would never be approved, no matter how good it was. The realization hit hard. The settlement had never been intended to help her. It was a performance, a professional dead end disguised as opportunity. She hadn't been given a second chance. She had been placed in a cage. As if that betrayal weren't enough, Locke was diagnosed with breast cancer during this period. The treatment was devastating. Surgery, chemotherapy, physical and emotional exhaustion that stripped her down completely. Through all of it, the man she had lived with for 13 years never reached out. No phone call, no letter, no acknowledgement. Still, she didn't disappear. She kept showing up. She kept pitching, and when she finally uncovered proof that the deal had been a deliberate setup, she decided to fight again, not for money, but for the truth. The fraud lawsuit that followed shook Hollywood. Studio executives were subpoenaed. Internal documents were dragged into the light. Witness after witness confirmed what Locke had been saying all along. The jury listened closely. And as the trial unfolded, it became clear that Eastwood's legal team was in trouble. The evidence wasn't ambiguous. The jury wasn't divided on guilt, only on how much the deception should cost. By the time Eastwood took the stand, the outcome was slipping away from him, and that's when he made the move no one expected. Instead of addressing contracts, studios, or paper trails, he attacked something far more personal. He suggested that Locke's suffering, her cancer, her treatment, her recovery, was exaggerated, that she was playing the victim, that she was manipulating the jury's emotions to win sympathy. In essence, he accused her of performing her pain. The courtroom froze. This wasn't legal strategy. It was character assassination. Jurors exchanged looks. One shook her head. Locke sat motionless as her attorney reached for her shoulder. Even Eastwood's own lawyers looked uneasy. They knew how it sounded. They knew how it would be remembered. But Eastwood didn't flinch. The accusation changed nothing. The jury remained firm. 10-2 in Locke's favor. They were preparing to announce it when Eastwood's team made a final, desperate move. An immediate settlement. Confidential. No verdict entered. No public record of loss. After years of legal warfare, Locke accepted. The amount was significant, but the silence it purchased was priceless. The case ended quietly. The jury was dismissed without delivering its decision. Eastwood left without comment. No apology, no acknowledgement, no reflection. Locke walked away with compensation, but her career never recovered. No major studio hired her again. The doors remained closed, even after she had proven her case, even after the conspiracy was exposed under oath.
She later told her story in a memoir, detailing the love, the betrayal, the manipulation, and the courtroom battle. Critics praised its honesty. It changed nothing. Eastwood continued his ascent, earning awards, respect, and a reputation untouched by the trial. The industry moved on. When Locke died years later, her passing was barely acknowledged. No tribute, no memorial.
It was as if she had been erased, not only from his life, but from Hollywood itself. The case lived on quietly in legal circles as a cautionary tale, a blueprint revealed too late for the person who exposed it. That trial was never really about money. It was about what happens when a powerful man is finally cornered. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Clint Eastwood didn't take responsibility. He chose to attack a cancer survivor's credibility. The jury saw through it. Hollywood chose not to. And that silence, the one that followed, said more than any verdict ever could.